Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Little Nightmares 2. I played it on the Xbox Series X. It's also available on the Xbox One, PS4, PS5, and Windows and Nintendo Switch. So Little Nightmares 2 is not unlike Little Nightmares 1 in that you go through the game and there's never any story that is directly explained to you. It's all very much implied. It's all stuff you piece together throughout the world, throughout what's going on, throughout what you're doing. You play as a young boy named Mono, and eventually actually very early on, you end up partnering up with Six from Little Nightmares 1. And you guys are going through a really, really weird, trippy, horrible forest into a horrible city, and it's really well done. It's really interesting and really engaging. And I will say, the story is not necessarily the strongest thing, but it is really interesting to experience the world and to see what they're up against, and just all of that combined makes it an engaging story element. Now let's get into the audio, which there is very minimal voiceover, so that doesn't really matter here. But what there is a fantastic soundtrack as well as fantastic sound effects. The soundtrack is good. It builds an excellent, haunting environment. It really fits with what's going on, whether you're just kind of exploring or there is more action, exciting moments going on. And then as for the audio, the sound effects and whatnot, it's fantastic. It really adds to the creepy atmosphere, the haunting feeling of everything going on. I felt like the sound effects really worked very well with this game. Now let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot. This is a side-scrolling puzzler platformer type game. Not 100% side-scrolling, but that is the primary element, but it is mostly based around solving the puzzles and the platforming. Now looking at this game, you may think that it definitely falls in that run, hide, or die category, but it really doesn't, because there are definitely times where you can fight back, unlike most run, hide, or die games, and it's well explained considering your character is like 1/10 the size of everything trying to kill him. So as I mentioned, you team up with Six, and Six is an AI-controlled character, and there are a few times where she will get stuck and you may need to jump off of a ledge and kill yourself to get her unstuck. Yes, I had to do that at one point. It wasn't a big deal, I didn't lose much, but it was kind of frustrating because it did happen, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the gameplay. Now in the past, you used puzzles to defeat some enemies, whereas in this, they have given you occasionally something where you can melee an enemy, and it doesn't work flawlessly. There were definitely a few times where I got killed repeatedly because it just didn't work quite as well as it needed to. But that being said, it still didn't destroy the overall experience for me. I figured out what I needed to do to work with the combat that they have in place, and once I did that, it worked much better. But it is still not exactly the strongest part of the game, unfortunately. Whereas I will say, I felt like the platforming and the puzzle solving and all the unique elements that just fit so well into the world and then add to that platforming and puzzle solving, I think that was all very well done. Now as for the controls, this controls very similarly to the first game in that it's a little sluggish, but you feel kind of weighty even though your character is very small. I really liked the controls. I think they worked well. It did take me a little while to get fully used to them. They're a little interestingly mapped out, but overall I think they worked well. I was happy with them once I got used to them and once I figured out each mechanic when I needed to figure out the new mechanics. Then lastly, the visuals. I love the visuals in this game. They really, honestly, I felt like they doubled down on what they introduced in the first game. I say that because honestly, Little Nightmares 2 really, honestly, I felt leaned more into the whole nightmarish feel that the title implies. The enemies were a lot creepier. They had a lot more of them, which I enjoyed, but man, they were way creepier, and just the world itself, the environment, was honestly more relatable than the first game. Because if you live in a city, I mean, a lot of this game takes place in a city, and it's just kind of this haunting nightmare version of a city. It's a nightmare version of everything, essentially. And like I said, I felt they leaned more into that. And one thing I really enjoy is that as a horror game, it uses still quite a bit of color. It's not like this game is just, you know, black all the time, dark all the time. It is very dark, but there's also a lot of color and they use it well. I was actually really happy that they stuck with the art style and they really evolved it. They grew with it. They made it what it needs to be for a sequel. I think they did a good job with that. And it has such a unique visual style that I just love it, and it really is fitting with the title. Okay, so let's get into the wrap up. And the first thing I'm going to say is it is a fairly short experience. If you're playing it on like the Xbox or PlayStation platforms, it's totally worth the price, because for some reason it's $30 there. On the Switch, paying $40 for it, I don't know about that. I did really enjoy it, but again, it's a short experience, so paying $40 for that is, That being said, I really don't have much to add in the wrap-up. I really enjoyed it. I like the art style. I like what these devs are doing, and I'd like to see more. So yeah, fully recommended. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me, have you played the first Little Nightmares? Because if you haven't, I don't know why you haven't. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one. I played it on the Xbox Series X. It's also available on the 360, PS4, not 360.